the beginning, Odomankoma, the creator of heaven and earth, shaped two brothers to govern the cycle of existence. He called them Inkwa, life, and Owo, death. They were not enemies but partners, each essential to the other. Inkwa brought life to the earth, gifting the world with breath and laughter. He planted seeds in barren lands, birthed children into loving arms, and filled the air with the joy of existence. Owo, his older brother, was quiet and steady. He did not take for cruelty, but for peace. He guided the weary, the sick, and the suffering from their toil, delivering them to eternal rest. Together, they balanced the world, their work seamless and harmonious. Every fortnight, the brothers would meet beneath the crescent moon at the junction between heaven and earth. They would share a meal and discuss their tasks. Nkwa, Owo would say, who have you sent to the earth this week? The potter's wife by the river, Nkwa would reply. Twins, strong and healthy. And you, brother? I will take the old woman from the mountain, Owo would answer solemnly. She has lived many seasons and is ready to rest. This was the balance of life and death, a rhythm as ancient as time itself. Humanity thrived under their care. They celebrated births with joy and mourned deaths with dignity, understanding that Owo brought peace, just as Inkwa brought hope. But as centuries passed, humans grew restless. Fear of death began to take root in their hearts. They whispered among themselves, questioning the need for Owo. Why must death exist? They asked. Why must he take our loved ones? Life would be better without him. The whispers grew louder, spreading like wildfire through villages. They no longer welcomed Owo as a gentle guide. Instead, they cursed his name and turned their backs on him. Children were taught to fear his shadow, and even the bravest elders shuddered at his approach. Owo saw this change and grieved. He had served humanity faithfully, but now he walked among them as a pariah, avoided and despised. Still, he continued his work, for he knew the balance must be kept. But humanity's fear turned to anger, and their anger turned to action. They gathered under a great baobab tree, their voices raised in desperation. We no longer want death among us, they cried. Imprison Owo, let us live forever. Their cries pierced the heavens, summoning Odomankoma himself. He descended in a blaze of light, his angels flanking him, their presence shaking the earth. His voice, deep and resonant, silenced the crowd. You dare to summon me with such fury? He asked, his eyes sweeping over the sea of faces. Why do you curse the balance I have created? The crowd stood firm, their fear giving them courage. We do not want death, they shouted. Take Owo away, let Inkwa rule alone. Odomankoma was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. You do not understand what you ask. Without death, life will lose its meaning. Without Owo, the earth will suffer. Life without death is no gift. It is a burden. But the people would not listen. Their cries grew louder, drowning out his words. They demanded their freedom from death, blind to the consequences. Owo stood in the shadows, watching the scene unfold. His heart ached, for he had served humanity with loyalty and care. Now, they wished to cast him aside. He turned his gaze to the heavens, his face etched with sadness. And so, Odomankoma made his decision. If you will not listen, then you will learn, he said. You curse Owo, yet he has walked faithfully among you, guiding your loved ones to peace with compassion and care. He has never taken for cruelty, only to maintain the balance of existence. Do not let your fear blind you to his service. His gaze swept over them as their cries continued, sorrow filling his voice. If you cannot see the truth, then you will learn it through the consequences of your own demand. The people's cries for immortality grew louder, their demands relentless. Day and night, their voices echoed through the heavens, calling upon Odomankoma to rid them of Ohuo. Though warned of the consequences, they refused to relent. But when Odomankoma delayed his answer, the people's frustration turned to fury. In their arrogance, they chose to take matters into their own hands. One fateful morning, a mob formed, a sea of angry faces armed with clubs and stones. They marched through the village, their chants reverberating through the hills. "Down with Owo! End death forever!" Owo, walking the earth as he always had, saw them approach. He stood still, his calm presence unwavering, even as the mob closed in around him. "What do you want of me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with sorrow. "You take too much from us," a man yelled. "Let us leave. We no longer want you here," screamed another. Owo sighed deeply. "I do not take what is not ready to leave. I do not act on my own. Your Creator has commanded this balance. Do not do this." But the crowd was deaf to his words. They lunged at him, seizing him with rough hands. They dragged him through the streets, their shouts growing louder with every step. Children cried, elders watched in silence, and the once dignified figure of Owuwo was paraded like a criminal. Stones were thrown, curses hurled. Yet Owuwo made no attempt to fight back. He bore their hatred in silence, his tears falling as he was dragged to the sacred junction, the place where Odomankoma met with humanity. At the junction, the mob roared to the heavens. Their leader stepped forward, raising his hands high. "Odomankoma, we have brought him to you. Imprison Owuo. End death once and for all." The skies darkened, and thunder rolled across the heavens. A brilliant light descended, and Odomankoma appeared, flanked by his angels. His gaze fell upon Owuo, who knelt in the dust, bruised and humiliated. The Creator's voice was like a storm. "Why have you done this?" The people stood firm, unflinching in their demands. "We no longer want death among us. Imprison him and let life rule alone." Odomankoma turned to Owuo, his expression heavy with sorrow. "My faithful servant, is this true? Have you wronged them?" Owuo looked up, his voice breaking. "No, my master. I have only done what you commanded. I have guided those whose time had come. I have taken no more and no less than was my duty." Tears streamed down his face. "Yet this is how they repay me, with hatred and violence." The Creator's gaze swept over the crowd. "You have betrayed one who served you without question. You think death is your enemy, but you do not see the peace he brings. Without him, your lives will spiral into chaos." But the people refused to listen. "We want him gone. Imprison him." Odomankoma sighed, his voice filled with the weight of eternity. "Very well. If this is truly what you want, then so be it." He raised his staff, and the earth trembled. Chains of blinding light descended from the heavens, wrapping around Ohuo. The people cheered as the chains pulled him into the ground, imprisoning him in a cavern deep within the earth. But as Owo disappeared, his cries echoed through the junction, a haunting mix of sorrow and anger. The people's cheers faltered, unease settling over them like a shadow. Odomankoma turned to the crowd, his voice stern. "You have made your choice, but remember this: life without death is not a gift. It is a curse, and you will bear the weight of what you have done." He vanished, leaving the people to their victory, unaware of the consequences waiting to unfold. For a time, the people rejoiced. Death had been vanquished, and life ruled without restraint. Children grew without fear, families flourished, and the shadow of Owo, the gentle guide, faded from memory. Humanity reveled in its supposed triumph, basking in the glory of an endless life. Yet, as decades turned to centuries and centuries to millennia, the truth of their choice began to reveal itself. Without death, the earth groaned under the weight of its ever-growing population. New life continued to spring forth, but none left the world. The land, unable to sustain such an unyielding demand, grew barren. Fertile fields withered into dust, and rivers shrank to trickles. The forests, once lush and abundant, became desolate, stripped bare by desperate hands. Among the people, the curse was most evident in the lives of the sick and the elderly. Without the release of death, their suffering stretched endlessly. A man who had once been a strong farmer lay motionless on a bed of straw, his voice reduced to a faint whisper. "Please, let it end," he begged, but his plea went unanswered. The elderly, their bodies frail and their minds weary, wandered aimlessly through the streets. Their centuries of existence had robbed them of purpose. Their once bright eyes were clouded with despair, their backs bent under the weight of years that refused to release them. What was once seen as a gift became a curse, and the people's joy turned to anger. With Owo gone, the people turned their fury to Nkwa. The once revered bringer of life was now seen as the architect of their suffering. "You have given us too much life," a woman screamed, her face twisted with rage. "Our lands are barren, and yet you keep filling this world," shouted another. "Look at us," cried an elderly man, barely able to stand. "Old, sick, and forgotten. This is your doing, Nkwa." Nkwa, whose radiant light had once filled the world with warmth and joy, dimmed under the weight of their accusations. He raised his hands to calm them, his voice gentle but firm. "I gave you what you asked for," he said. "You demanded life without end, and I gave it to you. I have done only what I was created to do." But the people refused to listen. Their anger grew louder. "If we must endure this endless suffering," someone shouted, "then let Nkwa take Owo's place. Imprison Nkwa, release Owo, let death free us." One moonless night, the people's anger erupted into action. A mob, torches blazing in the dark, gathered outside Nkwa's dwelling. Their voices were filled with fury and despair as they stormed his sanctuary. "You have failed us, Nkwa," they snarled. "You are no savior. You are the source of our torment." Nkwa did not resist as they seized him. His glow, once vibrant and life-giving, flickered faintly as they bound him and dragged him to the sacred junction where Odomankoma met with humanity. At the junction, the mob raised their voices to the heavens. "Odomankoma, hear us, we were wrong. Release Owu, take Nkwa, end this suffering." The skies darkened and thunder rumbled across the land. Lightning illuminated the crowd as the heavens opened. Odomankoma descended in a blaze of light, his angels flanking him. His gaze, heavy with sorrow, swept over the mob. "Thousands of years ago, you begged me to imprison Owo," he said, his voice calm yet thunderous. "You cried out for endless life, and I granted it, though I warned you of the consequences. Now you curse the very gift you once celebrated. You are relentless in your demands, blind to the chaos you create." His eyes bore into the trembling crowd. "First, you cursed death and begged for life eternal. Now, you curse life and cry out for death. Tell me, What will satisfy you? The people shrank back, their anger turning to shame. You think yourselves wise enough to command life and death? Odoman Koma continued, his voice heavy with disappointment. But you have betrayed them both. You imprisoned Owo and now drag Nkwa to take his place. You have not learned. You do not understand the balance. Raising his staff, Odoman Koma struck the ground. The earth trembled as the cavern where Owo was imprisoned split open. Chains of light shattered, and from the darkness, Owo emerged. His once gentle presence was now consumed by fury. His eyes burned like embers, and his voice was a low, menacing growl. I served you faithfully, Owo said, his words slicing through the silence. I ended your suffering when your time had come. I guided you with care and compassion. And how did you repay me? With chains and curses. The crowd cowered before him, their faces pale with fear. Nkwa stepped forward hesitantly, his voice trembling. Owo, my brother, you are free. But Owo's gaze hardened. Do not call me brother, he said coldly. While I rotted in darkness, you gave them everything they demanded. You let them forget me. Owo, Nkwa began, his light flickering. Enough, Owo roared. Your apologies mean nothing. Let them face the consequences of their greed. Odoman Koma raised his hand, silencing the chaos. Enough, Owo, he said. Your rage is justified, but your vengeance must not destroy the balance. Nkwa, your sorrow is deserved, but you must not let it extinguish your light. Turning to the people, his voice grew heavy with finality. From this moment, Owo and Nkwa are free. They will no longer serve you. Life and death will now act of their own accord as they see fit. You will live and die with the consequences of your arrogance. Without warning, Owo raised his hand. A shadow swept through the crowd. The sick gasped their final breaths. The frail collapsed to the ground, and the young fell alongside the old. Nkwa cried out in horror, Owo, stop, please! But Owo turned to him with a bitter smile. This is only the beginning, brother. Let them fear me as they once did. The people, broken and devastated, fell to their knees. Their cries echoed into the silent heavens. Odoman Koma was gone, leaving them to face the wrath of Owo and the absence of Nkwa's mercy. Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Share your thoughts below. Please like and subscribe.